Good day everyone and welcome to our video report on the evolution of Philippine taxation. Today, we will explore the fascinating journey of taxation in the Philippines, from its historical roots to its present-day significance. Taxation is an integral part of our lives, and understanding its evolution is crucial for comprehending its impact on our society. So let's dive into the world of taxation and discover how it has shaped our nation. In today's world, taxation is a reality that all must citizens contend with for the primary reason that governments raise revenue from the people they govern to be able to function fully. In exchange for the taxes that people pay, the government promises to improve the citizens' lives through good governance. Taxation as a government mechanism to raise funds, developed and evolve through time, and in the context of the Philippines, we must understand that it came with our colonial experience. Simplifying this concept, taxation is like a financial agreement between the government and its citizens. Just as we contribute to our community by paying taxes, the government uses these funds to provide essential services such as education, healthcare, infrastructure development, and public safety. It's a way for us to collectively invest in the betterment of our society. Now, let's take a journey through history and explore how taxation in the Philippines has evolved over time. From the Spanish era, when tribute and forced labor were imposed, to the American period with its introduction of the income tax and various reforms, we will uncover the significant milestones that have shaped our current tax system. It's important to recognize that taxation is not just a means of originating revenue. It is a reflection of our society needs, values, and aspirations. As we delved into the evolution of Philippine taxation, we will gain a deeper understanding of how our colonial past has influenced our tax policies and practices. So join us on this enlightening journey as we explore the evolution of Philippine taxation, its purpose, significance, and the impact it has on our lives. Together, let's uncover the historical context and contemporary relevance of the taxations in the Philippines.
Good day everyone, I am Sean Vistar and I'm going to discuss about the taxation in Spanish to the Philippines. So taxation in Spanish to the Philippines refers to the system of taxation imposed by the Spanish government during the colonial period in the Philippines. The Spain colonial government implemented various taxes to generate revenue and maintain control over the colonies. So here is an overview of the taxation system during that time. So first is the tribute or tributo. It is a general tax paid by Filipinos to Spain. It amounted to 8 reals and was imposed on males aged 18 to 50 years old. So now before, kita Filipinos to Spanish is like kita ang mobayad sa general tax sa ilaha. So then mo ask mo unsa din ang reals? So reals, it is a unit of currency in Spanish. No? So next is a sanctorum. It is a tax in the amount of 3 reals. It was collected to cover the cost of Christianization. Then third is the donativo. So donativo is a tax collected to fund military campaigns to the Muslims. Then fourth is caja de comunidad. This tax was collected to cover the expenses incurred by the town in constructing roads. So, ultimo po paghimo sa mga kalsada needed na po'y tax, no? So fifth is the servicio personal or polo e servicio. It is a form of a forced labor and able-bodied males aged to 60 years old. No, so before, Filipinos are forced to do work to like construction, mag-construction, farmers, bisig unsa, like wala sila'y sweldo. Then lastly is the bandala system. So the bandala system required native Filipino farmers to sell their goods to the government. So bandala system is we Filipinos hilig magikitag magtanom-tanom. So ang kana atong maani nga mga tanom, bunga sa atong mga tinanom is required gid siya nga isell ang atong mga napupo adto sa government. So, it means nga dili jud ka kadili no sa panahon pa sa Spanish. Sila mo'y masunod. Then, 1884, Spain introduced a tax reform that abolished the tribute and replaced with a cedula tax. No, naibot nga na sad og cedula tax. So this reform also reduced the duration of forced labor from 40 days to 15 days. The cedula tax required all men and women over 18 years old. So kaning cedula tax wala dapat sad ang baba.
Good day everyone, I'm Rilin Kisinangata. Let's talk about the polo system. The polo system was a form of forced labor imposed on male Filipinos during the Spanish colonial period in the Philippines. Polo system obliged to male Filipinos. Under the polo system, males aged 16 to 60 years old were required to provide labor for a certain number of days per year. Initially, they were obligated to work for 40 days, but this was later reduced to 15 days per year in 1884. Polos and services became lighter and was organized at the municipal level. This means that the labor requirements and organization were managed locally in each municipality. Males required to provide for 40 days a year labor reduced to 15 days a year in 1884. They opt out by paying the fallas of 3 pesos per annum. Individuals who did not wish to perform the labor service could opt out by paying a fee called fallas of 3 pesos per annum. This allowed them to be exempt from the forced labor obligations. Taxation during Spanish colonial period is a heavy burden placed on Filipinos. The labor requirements placed a significant burden on individuals and communities, affecting their livelihoods and productivity. In addition to the police system, Mariano Herbosa's letter to Jose Rizal provides insights into the taxation system during that time. Mariano Herbosa writes to Rizal about taxes. Calamba, 29 August 1886, letters between Rizal and family members. Manila, National Heroes Commission, 1964. Rice land, even if it has no water, must pay tax of 15 kivnes of palay or unhashed rice. They agreed 30 pesos for land with 6 kivnes of seed. Taxation on rice land even if it had no water, was required to pay a tax of 50 kevin. Dryland plant like sugarcane, maize, and others pay different rates, depending on the crop being grown. There is land whose tax is 25 pesos or 20 pesos. Residential lots in town don't have fixed rule that is followed. The tax amount varied and the contract for taxation could not be changed for 4 years, although the tax increased annually. The value of the tax was not explicitly stated on some receipt, and some receipts lack a signature even if a name was present. A nipa or kogan pays only 1 peso for an area for 10 fathom square. If you accept the condition, The contract will be written and cannot be changed for 4 years, but tax increase per every year. The value does not state the amount paid. Some receipt has no signature, even if there is a name. These details provide a glimpse into the specific taxation practices and rates during the Spanish colonial period in the Philippines, highlighting the complexities and inconsistencies in the system. Overall, the taxation during the Spanish period in the Philippines was designed to generate revenue for Spain and maintain control over the colonies. It imposed a heavy burden on the Filipino population and played a significant role in shaping the country's economic and social dynamics.
So taxation under Americans. Today I'm going to discuss how American collect tax sa mga Filipinos. The Americans who acquired the Philippines aim to make the economy self-sufficient by running government with the smallest possible sum of revenue and create surplus and budget. During the American time, they are trying to make some changes. From 1989 to 1903, the American followed the Spanish system of taxation with some modifications, noting that the system introduced by the Spaniards were outdated and regressive. Later on, the urbana would be replaced by tax on real estate, which became known as land tax. Urbana is a tax on the annual rental value of urban real estate. So if you're renting, you have to pay urbana kung asa ka nagarent nga real estate. Land tax is a local tax imposed on the ownership of real property, including land and building. The issue was that assessing the value of land was often influenced by political and familial considerations, making it difficult to establish a fair and impartial taxation system. Tax evasion also means people are not paying taxes, and it is prevalent especially for those who are in higher position. July 2, 1904, BIR was created, which they are the one who collect taxes. The Bureau is mandated by law to assess and collect a national revenue, taxes, fees, charges. This is why there is an internal revenue law. Because of difficulty in collecting taxes, they prescribe 10 major sources of revenue. By the way, revenue is an income. The cedula under the new law went through changes as the rate was fixed. That's why some places doubled the fee of the cedula in order to support the maintenance and the construction of roads. It is for the improvement of our country. As what you observe in our country, there are some developments happen because ang mga mga tax kay na dito gihapak sa gobyerno. Industrial tax, if you're a businessman, you are required to pay taxes depends on your profitability. If dako ang imong profit, of course, dako sa imong tax nga mabayran. By lifting these export taxes, the government hoped to stimulate trade and lower consumer prices for these products. However, this also resulted in a reduction in government revenue. New sources of taxes were introduced later on. In 1904, an income tax was introduced. In 1919, an inheritance tax created. And in 1932, a national lottery was established to create more revenue for the government. However, these new creations were not enough to increase government revenues. The effectiveness of these new taxes depends on the implementation and enforcement.
So, good day everyone. So, let's proceed to the next topic, the taxation during the Commonwealth period. So, before we proceed to our main topic, let us define first what Commonwealth is. So, if we are talking about Commonwealth period, this is an independent or a democratic country. Okay, let's proceed. So, in 1936, income tax rates were increased. So, during this year, in 1936, the government decided to raise the income tax rates. So, this means that people had to pay more money to the government. And the increase in income tax rates was a way for the government to collect more money and use them for the projects and etc. And also, if your income will exceed to 10,000 pesos, then expected that you are going to pay another taxes, and this is what we called surtax rate. So next is in 1937, the cedula tax was abolished because they see it as a sign of a progressive move. So if you remember to our last topic, that cedula tax established during the Spanish period in 1884. And this cedula tax before, it was called payment of tribute. So the cedula tax was a type of tax that people had to pay, for having a certificate called cedula. So this certificate was like identification document. So when Manuel L. Quezon became the president here in the Philippines, he removed this cedula tax. So when the cedula tax was abolished, it meant that people no longer had to pay this tax for having this certificate. And because of the cedula tax, the poor people getting poorer. And that is why the reason that cedula tax was abolished. So next is in 1939, the Commonwealth government drafted the National Revenue Code. So later on, we will discuss this new system. So let's proceed to the next. So in 1940, residence tax was imposed on every citizen aged 18 years old on every corporation. So the residence tax, this is the replacement of the cedula tax, and this is also called the Commonwealth Act number 465. Take note of that. So wherein all individuals living here in the Philippines, age 18 up and have a regular job and has also an income will needed to pay the taxes, including here also the corporation. And if you have any business here in the Philippines, so you were obliged to pay the taxes. So the National Internal Revenue Code, just like what I have said earlier, in 1939, the Commonwealth government introduced a new tax system. So first, we have the normal tax of 3% and the surtax on income was replaced by a single tax at a progressive rate. So there was a change in how taxes were calculated. So the normal tax of 3% and the extra tax on income were replaced by a new system. So instead of having two separate taxes, there was now only one tax, that changed based on how much a person earned. So this new tax was called a progressive tax. So because it increased as a person's income went up. So once that your income will increase, so expected that your taxes also will increase. So that is what progressive tax means. So number 2, we have the personal exemption were reduced. Number 3, we have also the corporation income tax was slightly increased by introducing taxes on inherited estates or gifts donated in the name of a dead persons. Number 4, the cumulative sales tax was replaced by a single turnover tax of 10% on luxuries. Number 5, taxes on liquors, cigarettes, forestry products, and mining were also increased. And lastly, the number 6, the dividends were made taxable. So let's proceed. So the introduced tax structure was an improvement of the earlier system introduced by the Americans, but still remain inequitable. So even though there was an improvement of the system, we can't deny the fact that there is still unfair treatment because we Filipinos are split into two classes. So let's focus on the lower class and the upper class. So according to the people belong in lower class, they still feel bulk because of the taxation given to them. And also it is hard for them to pay the taxes. So in other hands, the people in upper class, and some of them are the members of the government, and it is very advantage for them because they have the power to control the situation that would benefit them even more. So next, as World War II reached the Philippine shores, economic activity was put to a stop and the Philippines bowed to a new set of administrators, the Japanese. So during the World War II, it all began in 1942 and on 1945. So we are having again a new administration, and it was called the Japanese military administration. So this administration continued the system in collecting taxes, but unfortunately they exempted the articles belonging to the Japanese armed forces. So when the foreign trade fell, So the main source of the taxation are only the amusements, the manufacturers, the professions, and the business licenses. So that would be all for my part. No, thank you for listening and have a good day.
Now let's proceed to fiscal policy. Now, let's first define what is fiscal policy. So, fiscal policy is basically how a government manages its money to keep the country's economy on track. For example, is spending. This refers to how much money it wants to spend on things like schools, roads, healthcare, and other important stuff. Next is taxes. The government decides how much money it wants to collect from people and businesses. So, fiscal policy is all about finding the right balance between spending and taxes to keep the economy growing. When the war happened in the Philippines, it had different effects in different places. The capital city, Manila, was completely destroyed, like it was wiped out. But in other parts of the country, things weren't as bad. They weren't really damaged by the war. Now, even though some places weren't physically damaged, the way the country made money got messed up. The Philippines depends a lot on farming for its economy, but because of the war, farming couldn't run smoothly. So, even if some areas weren't destroyed, the way they made money got messed up because of the war's impact on farming. Even though the US said the Philippines was free, the Philippines still relied on them for money. This let the US keep some control even after the Philippines was supposed to be independent. Now, by the 1949, the Philippines didn't have enough money for important things like the military and schools. They didn't try to collect more taxes, and the United States suggested they start taxing directly. But President Manuel Rojas said no because he didn't want to upset his friends in Congress. Now, during President Elpidio Quirino's time, the Philippines focused on growing its economy. They did this by controlling imports and exchanges, which means they started making more of their own stuff instead of buying from other countries. They also passed new tax laws, like making companies pay more taxes, and these changes helped the government make way more money from taxes. For example, in 1953, they made twice as much compared to when Quirino first became president in 1948. Under the President Magsaysay, Garcia, and Macapagal, there was a promise to review the country's tax system. They created a tax commission in 1959 through Republic Act number 2211 to do this. From 1959 to 1968, Congress didn't make any new tax laws even though the economy was changing a lot. Some Filipino businessmen in Congress didn't want taxes on imports, and their influence led to such taxes being rejected. Tax collection stayed low, the tax system stayed a problem, and corruption meant a lot of public money was wasted, leaving the government unable to fund project development projects. Under Marcos' authoritarian rule, the tax system stayed unfair. From 1981 to 1985, most taxes were indirect, making up to 70% of what the government collected. The system didn't change much and didn't bring in enough money. Taxes increased by about 15% each year, but they didn't bring in much compared to what they could have. The government only collected about 10.7% of what they could have from taxes. When Corazon Aquino became president after the EDSA revolution, he changed the tax system with the 1986 Tax Reform Program. The goal was to make the tax system work better, make sure everyone paid their fair share, encourage businesses and individuals to grow, and make it easier for everyone to understand and follow the tax rules. A major reform in the tax system introduced under the term of Aquino, the introduction of the value added tax or VAT with the following features. Number one, there was a uniform tax rate of 10% on both locally produced and imported goods and services and no tax on exports and sales made in foreign currency. Number two, instead of having lots of different tax rates for various things like fixed tax, sales tax, and other specific taxes, there was a single rate of 10% for everything. This replaced the old system, which had 60 different rates for different types of taxes, like sales tax on different stages of a product's sale, taxes for specific industries like contractors or brokers, and taxes on specific products like solvents and matches. Number three, companies or businesses that make less than 5,200,000 in sales of receipts each year were subject to a 2% tax. Number four, instead of paying taxes based on how much money they make from sales, businesses could subtract the taxes they already paid on the things they bought. And this means they only pay taxes on the profit they actually make. Number five, basic goods like raw agricultural and marine food, as well as price regulated petroleum products and fertilizers, were not taxed when sold in their original form. This means that there were no additional taxes added when these essential items were sold. And lastly, number six, an extra 20% tax was added to luxury items like jewelry, perfumes, fancy toiletries, yachts, and other recreational boats. This means that if you bought these kinds of things, you had to pay more in taxes.
Good day everyone, I'm Jean Lauron, and now let's continue about the VAT law. The VAT law was created in 1986 and put it into effect in 1988. And initially, it was a reliable way for the government to collect revenue. And also, as more tax exemptions were introduced, the reliability of the VAT as a revenue source is decreased. And the government made administrative reforms to improve the tax system. So this included restructuring the Department of Finance and the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or the BIR, through Executive Order 127. And the reforms focused on increasing tax collection, conducting audits, introducing computerization, and reducing corruption. And also these changes help to build that in the BIR and result in an increase in tax and revenue effort from 10.7% in 1985, and it was changed to 15.4% in 1992. And also, the administration of Fidel Ramos in 1992 brought stability and economic growth to the country. As part of their efforts, they implemented the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program in 1997. And also, the goals of this program were to create a tax system that is broad-based, simple, and has reasonable tax rates. And also, it aims to minimize tax avoidance, encourage timely payments, and rationalize tax incentives. So in 1997, the VAT law was expanded through Republic Act 7716 to include services. The expanded VAT law included several features. So first is the VAT exemption were restored for all types of cooperatives, as long as the share capital of each member did not exceed 515,000 pesos. And the second one is the term simple processes. So this means that it was expanded to include broiling and roasting, which narrowed the tax base for food products. And the third one, the original state that state here. So it was expanded to include molasses. And the fourth one, the certain items were exempted from the VAT law, so such as meat importation, sale or importation of coal and natural gases, educational services provided by accredited private and educational institutions, house and lot valued at 51 million and below. So if that the house and lot and are valued to 51 below, it is exempted. And list of residential units with a monthly rental per unit not exceeding 58,000 pesos. And also sale, importation, printing, or publication of books and newspapers. So that's it.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. This is the continuation for our report. By the way, I'm Emily P. Arcelius. So, the succeeding term of President Joseph Estrada in 1998 was too short to constitute any change in the task system. Then, Vice President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was swept to power through another EDSA revolution. So, as a president, she undertook increased government spending without adjusting tax collections. This resulted in large deficits from 2002 to 2004. So the government had to look for additional sources of revenue. And in 2005, the expanded Value Added Tax or EVAT was signed into law as Republic Act 9337, in which it expanded the VAT-based subjecting to VAT energy products such as oil and petroleum and electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. As President Benigno Aquino III succeeded President Arroyo in 2010, he promised that no new taxes would be imposed and additional revenue would have to come from adjusting existing taxes. So the administration ventured into the adjustment of excise tax on liquor and cigarettes, or the sin tax reform. So the Republic Act 10351 was passed and government revenues from alcohol and tobacco excise taxes increased. So kanina pod ang naay taxes. So, in which the sin tax reform was an exemplar on how tax reform could impact social services, as it allowed for the increase of the Department of Health budget. The administration of the new President Rodrigo Duterte promised tax reform, particularly in income taxes, as it vowed to lower income tax rates shouldered by working Filipinos. Meaning to say that it proposed the tax reform to seek limit VAT exemptions and increase excise taxes on petroleum products and automobiles. It is hoped that reforms in the country's tax policy will result in the much better or much desired economic development that will be felt even by the lowest classes in the society, which is the poor one. So that's all, and we hope that you've learned a lot from us, and have a great day. Bye bye.